Hey there, you are listening to IWG Radio, the place to be for all of your wellness needs. Hosted by functional medicine physician Dr. Nicole Rivera. We just want to take a moment to thank you so much for listening and just let you know that any of the information that is provided is strictly for an educational resource and is not intended to diagnose or treat any conditions. The lifestyle interventions discussed should not be used as a substitute for any type of conventional medical therapy. Hey everyone, this is Dr. Nicole, and I am here with Dr. Nick Carruthers from Integrative Wellness Group. We work side by side here providing integrative medicine in Belmar, New Jersey. And today we have the pleasure of having Dr. Nick on the show in order to talk about one of our new technologies that he's going to be heading here at IWG. Dr. Nick's focus has really been about the brain, but as well as the emotional side of healing. And we're very excited to be introducing a technology that not only evaluates the brain, but also will actually provide a level of treatment to retrain the brain in a positive way. So I'm going to allow Dr. Nick to kind of introduce this technology and some of the ways that we're going to start using it here at IWG.
Yeah, I'm crazy excited about what we're bringing in. It's called a QEEG. The Q stands for quantitative, and then the EEG is the typical EEG, which stands for electroencephalograph. Really, that's a fancy word for it's a device that's able to scan and track the really the communication of the brain. So your brain, as sophisticated as it is, really communicates through electricity like the rest of our nervous system. And what the QEEG is able to do is to quantitatively track how well your brain is firing on different levels. When you're going throughout your day, your brain's always working through kind of different categories. The QEEG typically tracks your delta waves, alpha waves, beta waves, and theta waves. So like when you're sleeping, you want your brain to be in a really deep delta. That'll be like a dreamless sleep, a really deep sleep. And then throughout the day, you could be more in like a beta or a theta. So what this does, the first time you actually go through it, it takes about 45 minutes, but they call it creates a brain map. So it pretty much creates almost like a weather map of how your brain's working. You know, you think of a weather map and you look at it and there's the waves of red over certain states or certain parts of the country, and then there's green, and then there's yellow. It does the exact same thing for your brain to see actually what wavelengths your brain's firing at. And you should, through a lot of repetitiveness, be firing at certain wavelengths at certain times throughout the day or when thinking about certain things. So when the brain's not firing correctly, it's having a discommunication through the rest of your body. Easy enough, you could think of just being on a cell phone, because everybody talks on a cell phone. And when you're in an area of poor reception, you experience that static. So that's really what's happening to your body. If your brain isn't firing correctly, you're going to have a lot of static communication going on to the rest of your body, whether that's organ system, whether that's muscles firing. It's pretty crazy technology and pretty cool. I'm excited about it.
Well, I think one of the interesting things is I've had the pleasure of actually experiencing this technology, and as it's evaluating your brain through, that first visit, it has not only a visual component, but it also has an auditory component. So primarily what that means is you're able to have this scanning the brain using different electrodes, but what's also fantastic about it is you can actually we usually will advise the patient to bring in a DVD because you can really be watching whatever. So this is really fantastic for children because they're able to watch their favorite movie as their brain is getting evaluated. But
which is huge because a lot of other QEEGs out there, it's like you have to just sit still for like half an hour, 45 minutes, and if you have ADD, ADHD, autism, especially as a kid, and you're not wanting to sit still for that long.
Well, when I was having it done too, I didn't have my choice of a movie, so I was even getting antsy. So I can't even imagine a child by any means.
Right.
But what I found very interesting is it has this auditory and visual component. So as your brain is becoming fatigued, and it's not becoming fatigued from the machine, it's just showing that your brain is kind of going in and out of functioning optimally. And as your brain waves become compromised or your brain becomes stressed, you will actually see a darkening of the screen, and you'll also have the volume go lower. So it's actually extremely eye-opening as an adult, being able to really see how your brain is not functioning optimally.
Right.
And it really is eye-opening, but it also allows you to really understand, how much work needs to be done in order to move forward and get your brain functioning at its best. And we unfortunately live in a day and age that brain fog and memory issues, even if it's the short term, like where did I put my keys? That is so common. Everyone is dealing with some level of struggling with their concentration and just having this low level fog. And then obviously some people have more increased fog that they literally feel like they're walking through their day and it hardly feels real.
Yeah. And I mean, I was talking to a patient just yesterday about this, and it was cool because it actually allowed me to step back and, see how we progressed, not only just through evolving IWG, but also just how complicated the human body really is, and you can't serve it until all aspects of it are performing optimally. As both of us, we started our education with chiropractic school, so learning a lot on the nervous system and understanding how your central nervous system going to your peripheral nervous system, really all that is your brain and spinal cord, and then all the nerves going to every single cell, tissue, and organ in the body is the most important thing. That was like our foundation of learning, which was huge. But then through practicing chiropractic, works on that aspect of the nervous system more indirectly. So we work on the muscle skeletal tissue, working on joints and muscles. When they're not working properly, that's going to cause dysfunction or a poor performance through that brain and spinal cord. But quickly we realized that there's a lot more stress on our nervous system than just musculoskeletal stuff, which is why primarily you learned so much about functional medicine and how toxins and chemicals and everything else in that world will dysregulate and cause stress and a poor performance or even a poor performing brain. And then from there, our next step was like, well, what else isn't allowing patients to fully get better and be optimal? And we soon realized that there is an energetic and emotional side of things, and that was really kind of my passion. Learning more about the energy, the biophysics, and how emotions not used properly will also cause a lot of stress and allow our nervous system, our brain, to be able to communicate properly with the rest of the body. And we've been doing that and doing that very well. And there was still just, that group of people that we knew we weren't serving to the best capability that we could. And luckily you went to this convention and learned more on this, and it was literally just love at first sight.
Well, I think it's just really important to kind of even recap all of that, because at the end of the day, the body is super complex and everyone is very, very different. So we're going to have people that are coming in that maybe, they have this biochemical stress. Maybe they've been exposed to mercury because they ate too much fish, or they have a lot of those silver fillings in their mouth. And then there's some people that have had a ton of injuries. They've had whiplash and car accidents, and they were a gymnast and they have lots of injuries. And then we have other people that have gone through a lot of trauma, emotional trauma, loss of loved ones, etc. So every single one of those arenas are going to impact the brain and the nervous system. And really, we're just saying the brain's communication with the body. but we can look at that person and say, are you going to benefit from that physical work by, taking stress off the nervous system because you're getting your muscles and your joints worked on? Or are you going to benefit from detoxification to remove the toxins and the biochemical stress that is stressing the brain and the nervous system? And then there's people that can do some level of emotional work, which I think we all know it's very difficult to release emotions that have impacted us, or we've had to almost relive because it's affected our lives in such a high capacity. So this is kind of going to a way higher level by actually fixing the brain. And when I learned about this technology, there was a handful of patients that I thought of in my mind, and I'm like, if I was to have this technology a couple of months ago, I would have started them here. Right. I would have started them with the brain repair after especially seeing, their progress, because their brains were so complicated, and it's usually various things, and their brains were so complicated because of the emotional stress, the limiting beliefs, in addition to the toxicity. So if we can get that working more optimally, they're going to be able to be more successful with the other things we do moving forward. So this is just such an exciting thing, because it's really just being able to add another level to care, but it's also being able to repair the most important organ in the entire body. Right.
Yeah. And, you talked about, for you on the biochemical standpoint of being able to step back and this is where you should start out with, even though you do have some major biochemical issues. It's literally, not everybody, but the same thing on, your emotional side point. Your prefrontal cortex is one of the parts of the brain that majorly controls a lot of your emotions. And it's if that's not working properly, you're going to have a lot of emotional stress. It just makes perfect sense. Instead of trying to work on emotions, which could be a secondary problem and not the cause, let's work on finding and correcting the cause, which is a dysregulated, poor performing brain.
Yeah, and I completely agree. It's just, you might be listening to this and feel like you have tried to make steps towards your health. You've really, you've made an effort, you committed to a program, you took supplements, whatever it was for you, but you fell off. And I hear this a lot, the people that are all or nothing, especially, they're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this to the T, but then they burn themselves out with it. But at the end of the day, it's not that you're necessarily burning yourself out with it. It's just the motivation can become compromised if the brain is not working. There's definitely some people that, they struggle back and forth with being able to get their health on track. And if you can get that most important organ working optimally, it's going to make that a lot easier, because you're going to be repairing the mind, which is going to allow you to make different decisions and stay motivated and concentrate and really take those action steps towards healing.
And probably my favorite thing about this, new devices, there's QEEGs out there that, have the neurofeedback. The neurofeedback portion, if you look any of this up, is really what's creating the brain map. It's giving the computer information to be able to create that almost like weather map of how your brain's functioning. But then there's the second part to actually help correct those dysfunctioning aspects of the brain, and that's really called entrainment. So neuro-entraining the brain, or bio-entraining the brain. And what I love about this is that, like Dr. Nicole said, it has a light component as well as a sound component. So you have these glasses on, and it will actually stimulate different areas of the brain through a light activation in the glasses, as well as wearing headphones and having the frequencies coming out and stimulating the brain via sound. And why this is really important, and there's unfortunately not a lot of QEEG devices that do this, is because when you look at how the body works, it really works through our senses, through what we perceive. And the two biggest things are sound, which is a mechanical wavelength when you look at it in physics, and then through our visual systems, which is light, which is an electromagnetic wavelength. So if you want to create chain's fast, you need to be able to stimulate all those different pathways at the same time, and that's what this company's come up with, and the results have just been awesome.
So why don't we tell people a little bit about what are some of the diagnoses or conditions that could be appropriate for this type of technology?
I mean, appropriate, it's crazy because it's one of those things that could really benefit everyone, because you can only function as optimal as your brain's functioning. So even if you're increasing, your brain a little bit, you're going to have a better performance. And when I say for everyone, because you can have some athletes out there that increased amount of firing is going to allow them to win the tournament, win the championship for all their hard work and hours upon years that they put into. So it's on that aspect, it's going to increase, your peak performance that much more when you're playing at that high level. But really, what fires me up is helping those biggest voids. And with that, you really find two ends of the spectrum. At the younger aged kids with ADD, ADHD, autism, Asperger's, they don't function well in a social unit. A lot of just
sensory issues,
spasticity. And then you go to the reverse age group. You go to the elderly, and unfortunately now we think of the elderly having those chronic diseases, but it's really not. There's chronic diseases in all age groups now. So I guess I don't really mean elderly when I say elderly, I just mean those chronic disease cases. And the biggest voids are going to be the neurological ones with autoimmune. So it's like if you look at multiple sclerosis, if you look at Parkinson's, if you look at Alzheimer's, like all those kind of destructive neurological diseases are going to be hugely you're going to be able to speed up people's progression so fast just on this device by itself. And then when you combine that through getting rid of the body's toxicities and balancing out its biochemistries through proper nutrition and diet. And then if there is any, side things with, emotional stress that people's been carrying on that are taxing their system over and over and over, to be able to, regress and balance that out. The body, the crazy thing about the body is it can compensate so well until it doesn't. And then as a society, we're like, well, everything was going pretty good, and now literally the shit hit the fan. Like, why? And it's because even neurologically, like, we used to think that the brain, when you injured it, like with concussions, that would be huge for concussions. I'm excited because I've had 11 concussions myself. Like, I'm kind of anxious and worried about what my scan's going to come up, but knowledge is power, and we can act on it and we can correct it. But that's the crazy thing is, the brain is so powerful. When you do injure a piece of it, on the acute stage of things, it's going to activate the portion of healthy brain surrounding it to be able to say, hey, I need your help for a while. And it's going to learn how to do something that it wasn't really designed to do, but that's the compensation piece. It will be able to pull and say, hey, I got your back. I can help out for a while. But it's not as an efficient pathway, so it uses up a lot of energy, and that's one of the things why we're so tired all the time, is because our body isn't working efficiently. It can work, but not efficiently. So throughout this process, you're going to be able to, it's not only entrain the brain to work properly, but through also that and some other techniques to actually create what they call neurogenesis. So you can actually create new brain cells, which 5 years ago they thought, oh, your brain's your brain, every single day brain cells die and they're not growing back, and when you injure it, your SOL, all that's a lie. It's just a complete lie, and all the science now shows is that we have all the potential to grow new brain cells for the rest of our life. So it's a very exciting time to be able, as a practitioner, to be able to help people.
Yeah, and I think it's really huge what you said too is kind of when things start to decline, they seem to decline really fast. And I know just personally on more of the functional medicine side of our practice, I've dealt with quite a few neurological issues, from the multiple sclerosis and autoimmune related to also dementia, Alzheimer's. And it's very true that once the diagnosis happens or, the decline happens, it starts to spiral very, very quickly. And at that point, when you're trying to approach this strictly from a biochemical standpoint and you're trying to help this person to detox, or you're trying to help them fight Lyme, because neurospirochetosis is a real thing. People can have Lyme spirochetes in the brain. And a lot of times when you're getting an MRI and they're telling you that you have lesions or plaques on your brain, sometimes that's actually iron deposits, which is due to massive neurological inflammation. And sometimes that's actually spirochetes that are damaging the brain as well. So there is a huge issue with people not understanding fully why their neurological issues exist. Dementia, Alzheimer's is something that we have just kind of been taught to accept, that once this happens, that this is it. There's nothing you can do about it other than, just keep the person comfortable until their mind completely shuts down. And what's really interesting is that this is due to a lifetime of toxicity and a lifetime of infection accumulation. And with all of that, the brain slowly declines and starts to become more dysfunctional, and these brain waves become compromised. And this is usually why people are dealing with sleep issues, and they're dealing with energy issues, and they're dealing with brain fog issues.
And they're sympathetic driven, like they're stressed out upon belief. And
anxiety,
right?
Depression, etc. And these are things, again, they're the norm in our society now. And I think it's very important for people to know that these are not the norm. There are things that you can do about it that are not pharmacological. You can get outside of thinking that you need to live off of medications. You can be doing other things. And that's what I love about what we're doing here at IWG is we're really trying to provide that integration. We're trying to help you to understand, what does your body need the most right now to start this healing process? Is it going to be more of a neurological entrainment or repair? Is it going to be a detox or more of a replenishment of nutrients your body has been missing? Or is it really repairing you from a physical level? So it's really taking a very deep look at the body and understanding it as a whole so that we can advise you and help you to heal. So
I think that's the most important thing you said is you have to look at the body as a whole to be able to heal it, because nowadays it's just like there's crazy genius specialists out there, but they don't really help because that's only a small, especially the more specialized you are, it's even a smaller piece of the entire body.
Yeah.
And the body doesn't work separately. It's just everything has to be a congruent family, and without that, you're always going to have stress.
Yeah. Well, for us to, go to a neurologist and feel that the brain is the only thing involved, because technically we're talking about infections and toxicity that could be affecting the brain. So you would have to technically go to an infectious disease doctor as well as a neurologist, and they're not necessarily going to communicate with each other. So your diagnosis still remains a mystery. And there are so many mystery illnesses that exist now, or people that are going to the doctor, nobody can figure out what's going on, and then eventually seeing various specialists, still not getting answers, and then they're being told this is all in your head, you're probably going to need antidepressants or anti-anxiety. I can't tell you how much I hear that on a day-to-day basis. And at the end of the day, we do the testing and we figure out it's not in their head. There is plenty of things that are going on, but we're the first people to connect the dots for them. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about what we do. And I personally just absolutely love connecting the dots for people and having them understand that there's a reason. There is a reason why you feel the way you do.
So Dr. Nicole, do you want to go in a little more detail of what the actual process would look like if somebody came in wanting to, get a QEEG and, strengthen the health of the brain?
Yeah, definitely. So what we're really doing is we want to make sure that we're covering all of our bases, number one. So during the first visit, we're going to do an initial consultation, And we're going to be using one of our modalities here called autonomic response testing, which is a type of testing that can evaluate for different types of toxicity. It can actually evaluate the health of your mouth. So looking at if there is any type of dental issues, because the mouth is so close proximity to the brain. So we really want to see if that potentially is creating any issues. We also want to look at your sinuses. We want to make sure that we're not missing anything from an infectious standpoint that could be in your sinuses that could also be affecting your brain. And then we want to look to see is there heavy metal toxicity? Is there other types of toxicity that is neurotoxic, toxic to the brain? So we want to make sure that we have that full picture. And then in addition, we're going to do the brain map. We're going to use the QEEG to literally evaluate how well your brain is functioning, what parts are functioning optimal, what parts are not functioning optimal, and then in addition, looking at your brainwave patterns. So we're going to have such a comprehensive look of more of the biochemistry in addition to the actual map of your brain, and then also checking to see through our bioscan unit if there is any type of emotional components as well. So the bioscan is so interesting because it actually can scan your subconscious for emotions that are present. So we're able to literally hit various aspects that could be playing a role in your brain not working optimally. And then from there, at that point, we're going to be able to see what is the best fit for you. I know personally going through my own brain work, I had the woman that I was working with before, obviously having it here, she pulled off my headphones as I was getting it done and she said, "Are you okay?" And I was kind of like, uh-oh, what does my scan say? And primarily it was showing massive fatigue. And I was like, well, after being a student for about 8 years and then a business owner, I was like, that makes sense. But she pretty much told me, she's like, you could kind of swing one of two ways. After you do your first session, you might feel great. She's like, or you might feel really tired because your brain needs to heal and rest. And it was very eye-opening for me because I felt, of course, the opposite. I felt pretty tired and my brain, was definitely processing and healing. And I definitely felt like I needed herbal support at that point. So it was very eye-opening because as we work with patients, we want to make sure that, first of all, we're not missing anything. And second of all, we're giving you all of the support that you need to actually have your recovery be as fast as possible. So we might be utilizing some different type of herbal support, methylation support, neurotransmitter support, or we might actually be helping you with some detoxification methods if we're finding that there is a lot of congestion in the lymph nodes that surround your brain as well. So it's going to literally be extremely comprehensive with not only looking at the brain, but also looking at the physical structures around it.
And that's probably my most exciting part because I talk to a lot of other physicians and neurologists that use this device, and for the most part, they're getting great results just doing QEEGs and the neurotraining with it. And it's just like they're missing, like we talked about, all the other aspects. So it's just like combining and being like a truly integrative process, and which is how the body works. And I'm very excited about bringing this in.
Well, we're very excited for Dr. Nick to really be heading this program. You'll be able to find more information about this on our website. And then obviously feel free to give a call to our office. Our client services department is fantastic and they love to do 15-minute strategy calls. It's completely free. And you're able to ask more questions about your specific case and see if this is something that you're a candidate for. But definitely check us out online, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.